So this is one of the series called Author to Author, which I started long time ago in 2013. And, I started interviewing the famous linguist and scholar Noam Chomsky. And after that, many other scholars or pundits visited the studio, and it is to be live in a physical studio space, but the pandemic has put us into this virtual world, which is a good thing, because otherwise I never would have thought of interviewing someone 10,000 miles away. And my very prestigious, very famous, very beloved professor, Dr. Sanjukta Dasgupta. And with that, let me introduce her to my beloved audience. So as far as anybody, she's our Dean, Chair of the English Department, and author of 24 books. And she came to the USA as a Fulbright Scholar Fellow. She also taught in, I think, in the University of Krakow in Poland. And what drew my attention was her very recently achieved award. It's called Ethos Literary Award. And 24 books. She authored 24 books. And today you will be listening more about her book called Her Stories, 19th Century Bengali Women Writers, which drew my attention because it encapsulates the stories of 4 famous women writers. And she will talk about it, you'll hear in a minute. And her recent book also includes Sita's Sisters, which probably will not have time to discuss today, but I wanted to mention that specific book. And she's a poet, and I hope that she will give us some of her poetry recitation, maybe My Mother's Harmonium, because that again drew my attention. And I want to talk about a little bit about myself, because I think I've not done it for a while. My audience perhaps has lost track of time, or I have lost track of time as well. So My Mother's Harmonium, especially the name, the title of the poem, appealed to me because I just finished my monograph, Virtual Diaspora, Postcolonial Literature and Feminism. And there, I call it my memoir in disguise, because there my father and my mother, both of them, entered secretly. So I'm using a lot of my father's unpublished and published poetry. He was a deputy director, but he happened to be a poet as well. And Routledge allowed me to give a front piece of my photograph with my mother when I was 6 years old. So so I would like to hear about it. So without further ado, now I would ask you to talk about, I will pose my question. The introduction went a little bit long, just bear with me. The question is, since the time I met you in 2001, Ramakrishna Mission, you are our professor, but I do not have any direct classes with you. I know you more meeting you in the conferences, because when you joined, probably I just graduated. So, but that was a great encounter, because your poetry, you're reciting a lot of poems, and I read my chapter, Jouissance Escali, and we became very good friends immediately. You embraced me. And so I didn't realize then that you were that much of a feminist. I also read your poem called Why I Am a Feminist. Loved it. So let us start, because it seems that I have questions that I want you to say something about your passion for feminism, which Even without reading your books, I always felt, oh my goodness, she's so supportive. So let's start with that.
I, first of all, whether I should wish you good evening or good afternoon. I'm a little confused, but I guess I have to wish you good afternoon. From here, we are close to 10 in the evening. And Ashmita, this is just a sort of reunion that I feel you could do because of technology. And as you pointed out, that because technology has enabled us to get together this evening for you, day for evening for me, day for you. I think I'm getting really confused in terms of time zones.
It's okay.
But yes, you have really recalled our first meeting at the Ramakrishna Mission, and I remember how brilliant your presentation was and how very refreshingly new it was for me and also for a few others who were present that day, to be able to bring in Kali and to see the Indian goddesses being posed against a very, very French psychoanalyst's idea of jouissance. And it was brilliant. It was a learning experience for me. And so since then, I think we hit it off, as you say.
Yeah.
And then on and off, we have been keeping in touch with each other. I have received a few of your books, which you sent over to me. And you have also told me about all the good work that you are doing. And you are still doing a lot of work, and your book is expected. And your particular question about feminism is, I think, when I was a student at the MA classes of Calcutta University, or even in the undergraduate English honors course in Presidency College, there was no notion about a feminist identity, or that the identity of woman is at all important. In fact, till the time I became a teacher at the postgraduate level at Calcutta University, for me, up to that point of time, it was all about mankind, and mankind included
not
womankind.
womankind. Yeah.
Yes, I think mankind is one of the most unkind signifier I've ever heard. And so I would rather go for humankind. But at that time, I didn't know. So the curriculum that we had to study, all the grand narratives, all the texts that we read were mostly means 98% were by male authors. So male author texts was the norm. Beyond that, there was no question. And if there were a few women writers, these were considered to be very exceptional, super talented, extraordinary, from extreme privilege they had come about, like Virginia Woolf. And so these were a few texts that managed to somehow creep into that extremely male-dominated curriculum. So how did I even find out about feminist claims and feminist identity? Once I was walking down Lindsay Street. I have a favorite bookshop there, and I picked up Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex.
Second Sex, yeah.
And within a few days, I was a different person. Okay. That book, and I used to read it like the Bible. I consider it a Bible for me, though of course I would also give Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own a great credit. Yeah. And then of course The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan and many others. And then of course things became more complicated, more problematized. Then you went for Kate Millett and sexual politics and sexual textual politics of Toril Moy. So, and then Judith Butler. But these came,
yes.
These had become academic studies. But for my own self-realization, I think Simone de Beauvoir, a French woman, an existential philosopher, suddenly made such a tremendous change
impact on your mind,
in my way of thinking, in my way of understanding myself, because I hadn't read any book which was about the history of women. It was all about mankind up to this time. Here was womankind being discussed by a scholar. And therefore, from the primitive times to the agrarian economy, to early industrialization, to the 20th century, she took me on a journey. And at the same time, I realized that, yes, it was a journey. A lot was changing. But what was not changing was the attitude of patriarchy towards women. Clothes were changing, language was changing, education was available, but patriarchal control of the minds and bodies of women seemed to be the constant. So that's how it happened.
Yeah.
And so I'm still very much a disciple.
Carrying on the movement, because we are still not over it, right? It's still.
No, it will not be over. It can only be over post-patriarchy. And there is nothing like a post-patriarchy.
Yeah. So what not surprised me, what amazed me was the fact that, because I'm very fond of French feminist thinkers, and the Simone de Beauvoir impacted your mind, or first that moment of eureka occurred through reading Second Sex. Yes. And also you mentioned the other scholars as well. So so this is the academic side of you, or the intellectual side, but it doesn't mean that you were only limited to that. You also had a different realization, as you mentioned in your poem, right? I'm a feminist. Why I am a feminist? Because it's very spontaneous that you are trying to remember the poem, few lines, that because you have a heart. So do you have the poem in front of you? Would you like to?
Where did you find that?
I was looking at all of your works. I think one of the things I'll tell you, what impressed me was that you are explaining to your audience that it is quite natural for any human being would be or should be a feminist, because we have eyes, so we are a feminist, because we have heart, because we have mind, and this is the most spontaneous thing to be a feminist. This is nothing like extraordinary or magnificent something. So it should be part of, just like drinking water. So which reminded me of, because my father used to talk about that essay quite a bit, Narir Mullo, Chandra Chattopadhyay, and I often use that quote, or I used it in one of my books, that this would be the translation of that line which he often used to quote to me, is that if we don't have, like, we know the value of jewels, Moni Maniko, and everything, but you will only understand the importance of women if you can't drink water, if there is no water on earth. So Sharat Chandra compared the water analogy metaphor for the importance of how essential. So it reminded me immediately Sharat Chandra's quote, Narir Mullo, the value of women. And so that also brings to my mind the article, your essay, which sort of bothered me. I took on my sleep, Tagore's Dutiful Daughters. That Tagore, it's the icon. I mean, like feminism, and he's described in many articles as a feminist man. He is, and the subtitle of that piece is Ambivalence in the Family. That Tagore, the Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, he, whereas he inspired women throughout the century and even to this day, was different, behaved differently with his own daughters. And so I wonder if you have any comment on that before I move into your book, Her Stories.
Well, for me, Tagore is still an icon, sort of a role model, and Tagore is an inspiration, and Tagore's poetry is something, and Tagore's music, his lyrics, all that I guess I have internalized it all. But when I was reading his biography, in order to put the book Radical Rabindranath together, especially since I was writing about 5 chapters in that book, 3 of us co-authored that particular book. But I was entrusted with the writing of about 5 chapters, which included the introduction, as well as I think the 9th and the 10th chapters, which dealt again with Tagore's own life, his own, and the various women he was close to. Now, as I was reading the biography, I was in a state of shock. As you said, you lost.
I was shocked too. Yeah.
And I thought, now how could this be? Somebody who could write a short story like The Wife's Letter, someone who could write short stories and also novels where women were being presented, having a very independent mind, having an independent mind, an independent idea of traversing through life with certain decisions that they can take themselves. And here we find that in Tagore's family, where his elder brother and also his elder sister's children went to school, Tagore's daughters, the 3 daughters of Tagore, he had 2 sons, but one did not live for long, and the other, of course, but one had a proper schooling, that is Rothindranath. But in the case of Tagore's daughters, none of them were sent to school. They were homeschooled. But homeschool is not bad, especially if you are in Jurasha, because that is like a conference hall where the top intellectuals are everywhere. Even whether you're dining, whether you are having breakfast, whether you're going out for a walk. These were the most talented people that Bengal had ever seen in the late 19th century. But these girls, what was very, very disturbing is none of them were sent to school. And when Tagore's wife, Mrinalini, fell very ill, and the family anticipated that probably she will not live for long, because typhoid consumption, typhoid was and tuberculosis, these were diseases which were known as killer diseases. And so when she contracted typhoid, they thought that she would not survive. And then Tagore suddenly became very, very disturbed by the fact that he will be left with 3 young daughters. And Tagore was traveling a lot. And he felt that all his travels will be disturbed because he will not, there is no caregiver looking after the kids. And so there was the only solution at that time was to get them married. And getting them married means that he had to identify prospective
Suitable
sons-in-law.
boys. Yeah,
And
suitable
these
boys.
prospective sons-in-laws happened to be those who were ambitious enough to pursue higher studies in England or America. So these are the young men that Tagore identified and promised them. This is almost like a dowry. So he
Yeah,
promised them support
send them
in
abroad.
either the UK or the United States. And so he got them married. And the first one was married when she was 14. The second one was married when she was
Ten
about
and a half.
10.
10. Yeah,
And yes, 10 and a half. And
ten
the
and a half.
next one, yeah, and the third one also got married when she was about 13. So all this, and all three marriages, as luck would have it, these could have been very successful marriages, because marrying minor girls at that time was not considered to be something illegal as
Yeah.
it is
Oh,
right
okay.
now.
That was going to
Yes.
ask. Yeah, 18 is the, yeah, that was not it.
Yeah,
As a
now
matter of,
18 years
yeah.
since India's
Mhm.
independence.
But
But at that time, it
fine.
didn't matter. You
Yeah,
could even marry younger girls.
that is horrible. Yeah,
So, but
yeah.
then what happened is the second one, that is the one who was 10 years old, Rani, she's the one who died first. Yes,
Mhm.
within 1.5 years of marriage. And her husband at that time was not even in India. And so Tagore had taken her all the way to Almora, which is in the foothills of the Himalayas, because he was advised by many people that maybe the weather there would cure her. But nothing therapeutic happened, and the little girl died.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and the youngest daughter was betrayed
Yes, the
by
youngest
the
daughter was
husband, and
betrayed.
Tagore was nice enough to, make her house Maluncho, right? He wrote about,
Yes,
yeah. I've seen it when I
yes.
was in Shantiniketan, but that's not
Mhm.
so less. And I also remember
But
Meena
she
Lady
lived for a
Devi,
longer time. She lived
70,
into her
77.
60s or late 60s.
Yeah. But interestingly, two comments. One is that Tagore's sisters even went to Bethune school. So he was not very, I don't know why this happened. And that makes me think, I mean, as you mentioned, ambivalence, that uh, I don't think he did for his own success deliberately wanted to avoid the responsibility, but somehow he felt overburdened or something. And I wonder why other family members, it was a joint family, did not come forward, because this new finding about Tagore's life is not going to take away my respect and love for
Yeah,
him and his
precisely.
writings, but it makes me feel sad that he suffered. He must have suffered very much so mentally, but maybe
Yeah.
that's why he wrote so many, songs and books. But so I would have loved to know, if you had been alive to interview him, why couldn't you reconcile these two streams of
No,
your life?
actually, there is a particular conjecture, which probably is a reliable one, is the fact that, Tagore was a full-time poet. And a full-time poet may get a lot of recognition, but the person's economic status is really, really low. And he
Okay.
was a proud
Yeah, I
guy.
know, I know.
And he could not, though Shratindranath Tagore was the first ICS of the whole of India.
Whole of
And
India.
he was, yeah, and he was the first ICS of India. Shratindranath Tagore and Ganadhar Nandini were very, very well off, but Tagore never wanted that sort of a monetary support from his elder brother. And the
Hmm.
younger brothers were also all, none of them were earning much money. None of them had that sort of
Okay.
money to
Okay,
put.
so
And
there is
so
a point.
Tagore
Yeah,
found that it was impossible to
possible.
put his girls in school. And then when his wife fell ill, and then he noticed also at the same time that Debendranath Tagore, that is Tagore's father,
Father.
was also not going to live for too long. And Tagore wanted his father to give some sort of a financial support in order to get his daughters married.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was Debendranath who paid all that money of all the
Oh
dowry. Where
dear.
would
Oh
Tagore
dear.
get
Yeah.
married?
Yeah.
Tagore be able to send off these prospective young
Ah,
men to the UK or the United States when he did not even have
yeah, I was
money enough
wondering.
to
Yeah.
send them? So it
Yes.
was Debendranath Tagore who fixed these amounts on these various prospective sons-in-law, and they took that money and agreed to marry Tagore's daughters.
But
So
did he?
it's a miserable plight, really, if you think.
Yes, yes. He received his Nobel Prize in 1913. I have to check the time, when. So, and he invested that money for his university, Shantiniketan. So
Hmm.
this must be happening prior to that time.
No, this is around 1901 and 1902.
Very
This
miserable
is when, yeah.
economic. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this time he did not get international recognition. He did not have money, as like I will give you a very anecdotal example. When at the age of 15, I told my dad that I want to become a full-time writer or something. My dad said,
Oh,
from our middle class families, if you are going to do something that uh, that dangerous,
radical. That radical.
that dangerous, what would happen is that probably you will not be able to earn a livelihood at all from writing poetry or writing short stories, and who knows what your fate will be. So it is better. And he gave me an example. He was teaching at the city college then, and he gave me the example of Narayan Gangopadhyay. He
Okay.
said Narayan Gangopadhyay's full-time day job was teaching in the Bangla department of City College.
Uh-huh.
And in the night, he wrote
Right.
about Tenida.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So
It
my
seems
dad said
like,
that
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
writing you do it along with a
Something.
full-time
Yeah.
job which
Yes.
will really support your livelihood.
Lifestyle. Yeah. Which reminds me of myself. Like, it's sometimes very lot of pressure to do teaching and writing, but writing became like oxy. I cannot live without it. I don't know sometimes how I write, but when I write, I'm possessed, right? But
Yeah,
you have to support yourself. So yeah,
yeah,
makes sense.
that
It
is
makes sense.
absolutely absolutely necessary.
So,
Economics and literature.
so
Yes,
that may
they are absolutely parallel, but they
intertwined.
sustain
Yeah.
each other also.
Yes, yes. That makes me jump to your book. I'm looking at the time, Heart Stories, 19th Century Bengali Women Writers. I'll tell you very briefly what was my take on that
This
book,
is
if
the
you can
book.
show us. Yes,
Mm.
it's so beautiful. I have an
Thank you.
e-copy, but can you lift it up a little bit more? I still
Yeah,
want to see.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, wonderful. And what was the publication date?
I think it was 2002. It happened because of my first Fulbright postdoctoral fellowship at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. My PhD dissertation was on Hemingway and Aldous
Yeah.
Huxley.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to North Carolina and to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, nobody was interested to know what I had understood about Hemingway. They said, we want to know something about your own country and its own
Yes, yes,
literature
yes, yes.
and women's writing. I did not have anything in terms of resources, but because I hadn't even carried anything.
Yeah,
I was a very, very
that is interesting. Yeah.
avid reader of Bengali fiction. So at that time, thank God, 98 was a time when it was quite possible to send material via the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of it came in that way. And then, of course, within 2 months, my husband mailed me some of the books that I wanted. And the translation of this book
Four authors
began,
you translated.
yeah, 8 of them. Uh, And the
8 of them. I think I read
translation
only
of
4.
these
Yeah.
short stories began in North Carolina at
Oh,
Chapel Hill.
that is a very important piece of news for me. It reminds me of Spivak's comment that the Westerners, they think of us as native informant,
Yeah.
but she said it in a negative way, but this is very positive, the way you are interpreting. It's sort of, it, if I may say this, it opened up a new avenue. Because
Yeah, it opened it. Yeah, it made me confident that I could handle translation. And then I also became interested in women's writing because I was already over there
yeah,
working on the novels of Anne Tyler and women of the American South who were far more conservative in
conservative, yeah,
their approach
yeah,
in terms of their subject matter, which was very family based and
very based,
location based, and they were very proud of their heritage, of their identity.
yeah,
They were very different from the New Yorkers. And
yeah.
so I
So
was ready to learn all that.
learn,
And
yeah,
then I thought I would use it as a sort of a comparative study.
study.
And that is how it happened.
So very quickly, I would say that I have a little fascination for this native informant, this term, in a positive sense, not the way Spivak
Mm,
was describing, because same way, how did I write the chapter that I sent you yesterday, Women in the East and Women in the
yeah,
West, that
it's a
was
brilliant
part of,
piece. Yeah.
that was the afterword of my dissertation, because when I'm getting my degree in 1994, my supervisor, she's telling me, Ashmita, this is a comparative literature work. I cannot keep it in the main part of the dissertation. Dissertation was written on D.H. Lawrence and Clarice Lispector, but this has to be kept separately in the afterword. Otherwise, how can I? Because we didn't have comparative literature department,
Mm,
and I was studying in Bowling Green State University, Ohio. So she's a feminist. She introduced me to feminism, and she allowed me to keep it, which gave birth to my first book, Jouissance de Genando. And
mhm,
how? The reason I wanted to share with you, because it seems like similar story, your story. So when I went to Brown as a visiting scholar, and they asked me in the first meeting, openly in the seminar, in
mhm.
front of everyone, the director, she's asking me, Dr. Elizabeth Weed, that I know you wrote about jouissance from the French feminist point of view. What do you have to offer? Can you offer us something from your own culture? That
Mm.
sort of triggered the whole book, Jouissance and
Yeah,
Kali, which you like. Whole book, yeah.
that's
Oh
precisely
my
what happened
goodness.
to me.
Yeah, I'm neglecting it. No, I was not. And it seems like being here, I'm writing about my country, right? The
Mhm.
book that each and every book, theory I'm taking from the West, and then I'm giving a counterpart of that according to the East, same in virtual diaspora. And then I'm interpreting the authors from my country, because so I'm not writing about English authors that much anymore. So do you see? So it became cross-cultural, right? Very cross-cultural. But I want to ask you specifically about Bani Bosch and Nabanita Devshin stories. I know Ashapurna Devi, but because I'm looking at the
Mhm.
time, if
Yes.
you can tell me that Bani Bosch impressed me, because all the characters, they're the 5 women, they're going through all this
Mhm.
suffering, but they are conquerors at the end. So, so feminism, as you said, it should not be just about the struggle, as I believe, but it should be all about supporting each other, love, and finding a way. But recently, I've also been very much influenced by this theory of Judith Butler's book I read, was in Oxford, and where they introduced me actually to this book called Vulnerability and Resistance.
Mhm.
And because in Oxford, they have a movement, there's a feminist, her name is Pamela Sue Anderson, and
Mhm.
she gives us the theory of vulnerability and love, where she's going one step forward from Judith Butler's theory of vulnerability in resistance. And she's saying that we have to conquer it through love, camaraderie. And sort of in Bani Bosch's story, I, felt the nuance of that empowerment, women's empowerment through love, bonding. And you also interviewed, when you interviewed these authors, you asked one of them, I think to Dominica Devshen about literary theory. And my thoughts will go on and on, but I should
Mhm.
stop and give you the chance to talk. That I also love that, your book, Shita's Sisters, and Nominita Devshen has already rewritten,
Mm.
trailing that uh, legacy of Chandravati. So we
Yes.
have poets like that. So, okay, done. So,
So, yes, in this book, Her Stories, actually, I was looking at the very successful 20th century women writers, and Ashapurna Devi was the senior most among them, whom you mentioned. Mahashweta Devi became internationally known
I know,
because her writing was what we
translated.
would call activist writing, and there was a lot of interest in that, especially in terms of the subalterns, because the subaltern
Back.
discourse
Mm-hmm,
emerged at that time with Ranajit Kaur.
mm-hmm,
And so it happened when Mahashita Devi's texts could be used as illustrative texts of the theories of the uh, subaltern intellectuals and
mm-hmm.
thinkers. So, and Mahashita did not write about the middle class so much.
Yeah, working
She was
class
looking
women.
at mostly at the tribals, at the marginalized, the wretched of the earth, the most neglected, who were denied all the facilities of public health, denied the facilities of education, denied the facilities of having a roof or a shelter to live in. I'm not even calling it a house or a home, just a cover over one's head. Yes, those were things for which people had to battle, and most people failed. And then Mahashweta Devi was able to address those issues, and Gayatri Spivak, of course, made her well known through those
Famous, yeah.
brilliant translations. Now, Nobunita Devsen also is a very widely traveled, internationally known writer, and also a very, very diehard, staunch feminist. And so Nobunita's story is really a very, very provocative story. Yes. And in
Mm-hmm,
fact,
mm-hmm.
all the stories that I
I
picked
love,
up,
I love that story. Yeah.
yeah, and the stories that I picked up for translating were not those absolutely distraught women who were constantly weeping and blaming themselves and complaining to everyone why she was born. I was looking at Amartya Sen's argumentative
Indian.
Indian in the 5th chapter, which is called um, Women
Big
and Men.
man.
Amartya Sen talks about the ill-being and the well-being of women. I was trying to concentrate on the well-being of women,
Mm-hmm,
women with voices, women
mm-hmm.
discovering their identities,
Yeah.
women breaking free in whichever way possible, vocalizing their thoughts, probably never talking about it, in total silence, resisting. Both resistance and resilience have been an integral part of all these stories
Mm-hmm.
that I have
Thank you.
chosen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very
So,
glad that you mentioned Amartya Sen. Yes, his chapter. I'm very
and
fond
of
of that
course,
book.
because your book,
Oh, no,
capacity building.
no. Capability, you like that,
Yeah,
I was even offered to
capabilities,
teach
capabilities. Yeah.
as a visiting professor, and I regret to this day I did not go because my daughter was not well. So
Mhm.
I had to cater to that. Oh, I remember in 2016,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
after,
It
yeah,
didn't happen. Yeah.
now which will never happen because of COVID. But I'm very happy you mentioned that. And can we continue a little longer, or you want to end here?
Yeah, yeah. What I can do is now just read a poem and then conclude.
Um,
Or do you have a few other questions?
yeah, but I don't know. The question that I had was uh, for you to tell me why the you are in your work very deftly, very passionately. You focused on women's problem, which is a universal problem. I feel women are species, like it goes beyond country, territory, everything. But most of the time, I think being in this country, I feel that the problem, that patriarchy that bothers women, and that's why I loved Amatushan's writing, because that one single quote from him, that women, underdogs, minority women and underdog always have to adapt to the status of the second class citizen. This is the way I feel I lived. I was telling my husband yesterday that, I always mourn now. I should have gone back to India. I should have gone back to India. I like a lot of regret, and the whole book, I'll send you a copy. It's on the almost the regret, and constructing a new territory through mind, coming and going and coming and going, to the French philosopher Deleuze, Norbert Deleuze, in love with Deleuze's theory of nomadism. So the question is, what do you have to say about women like us who stayed back here, lived in a lot of mourning? There are a lot of good things here. Probably I would be not writing so many books. Probably I would be, because my dad wrote many books sitting in India. I could have done that. You did, but you kept the contact in this country as well. He only went to France, but you regularly come, right? So my question to you is, what is your answer or advice for women like us who are in this country? And your writing, specifically this book, also reminded me of Chitra Banerjee's writing, Arranged Marriage. Some of the women fit into that category. And she also talks about resistance and resilience. And I loved that you combine them together in this, translating these authors. So yeah, that's the one last question I had for you. Then you can recite your poem.
Actually, I cannot have any sort of advice for those of you who decided to move out of your own country and settle in, what would we call it, the land of opportunities.
Wow.
And for me, because I'm an occasional visitor, for me,
Yeah.
of course, this is not trivializing a question. For me, the first thing in the land of opportunities is that you have to do the dishes.
Oh yeah, I brought my sister. She's always crying. I'm going to go back. Every day she's telling me she's going to go back.
So, but at the same time, yes, you can refer to Jhumpa Lahiri's namesake. Yes, the two generations matched there. Yes. So one generation, the new migrants, are always, have this sense of feeling that they are in the wrong place, but it has been a right choice. And so, this sort of a sort of tension between the homeland and the heartland is one which the new migrants face a lot. But as soon as you talked about your daughter, who probably was born in the United States or maybe born in India, and later on she went there. But for the second generation immigrant, it is not India or any place of origin is not home. It is a tourist spot. Yes.
Yeah, that's what Lahiri writes in her memoir, In Other Words. And my daughter tells me she doesn't like her writing because it seems like she's telling her story, exactly as if she's looking at her from behind her ears. Hey, I know your story, Yes, so
yeah.
you're permanently
And so,
nomad.
yeah, so this bicultural stress that the new migrant faces is not something that the second or third generation immigrant would face at all. And then this is not something that you are refugees or you have your asylum seekers. This is really about a choice that one made. After the Immigration Act of 1961, this mass exodus of white-collared workers, that is those who are highly educated, doctors, engineers, teachers, accountants, everyone spread out throughout the world, which is good because from the central government, we learn that you invest a lot of money in our own country. So the diaspora is looked upon as a money spinner by the government because the diaspora tends to invest in the place of origin or the land of birth by whatever they can sort of put away. They were investing in terms of land, in terms of houses, in terms of even philanthropy. So all this gives the diaspora a very prestigious position in India because of all these investments. But
Yes.
at the same time, as I said, the first generation migrant, the new migrants are always experiencing this pull and push.
Yeah, I am unhappy now, but my daughters, they continuously went with me every year, and they're very attached. Now the grandparents are gone. They have no place to go now, so we
Mhm.
often miss it very much so. And yeah, but you said very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's why, yeah. So I wrote this book to construct this space, new mental space where you are coming and going mentally.
Yes,
And
and then the more you interact, like you are in academia, you are in the intellectual community, you have not ghettoized yourself into a Bengali community, or as people do, the Chinese stay together, the Koreans stay
no,
together, the Vietnamese stay together, but you have been very open. And it is
no.
this inclusivity,
Yeah,
it is your inclusiveness which matters,
thank you.
because otherwise what happens is the moment you shut the door, enter your own apartment or house, it becomes India. You open the door and it is the United States. It is this sort of a binary should not happen.
Yeah, I have mostly international. Yeah, I don't know why. Yes, it happened because,
It should be a free flow, there should be a fluidity of cultures,
yeah,
because inside the house, if it is Bengali culture, open the door, it is the United States.
there's a
That
division.
binary is disaster for both.
Both.
That's my feeling
Okay.
from my
Thank
observation.
you. Thank you. That's the most beautiful and valuable comment. I think we have to carry on that fluidity of
Yeah,
culture. I love the term
yeah.
fluidity of culture. That we only talk about feminism in terms of fluidity, but that is also, of course, it is embedded in it. You
Yeah.
cannot, as you said, why I'm a feminist. Yeah,
Mhm.
wonderful, wonderful. It was such a blessing
Yeah,
and pleasure. I feel like I could talk with you forever.
yeah,
So
yeah,
many
yeah. Same here.
questions. So we had to carry
Maybe
on.
some.
Continuation of
Yeah,
the session. I'll let you know.
yeah.
And so give us your
Oh, you want
recitation.
me to
Yes,
read
yes.
Sita's Sisters?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. All right. I will just. This is from my seventh book of poems. It's called Unbound.
Okay.
And here the editors got together and picked out, selected poems from my first six books, and which was why it's called New and Selected Poems, and asked me to select my new poems, which they wanted to put into this book. So this one is a little thicker than usual poetry books, which are really,
Yeah,
really
look, it's
slim.
beautiful. I like the cover.
Yeah.
Very pretty the
So,
color.
no, I think I will read another one. I
Okay.
will read because we are now watching Delhi Crime Season 2. And when I watched Delhi Crime, this is the Nirbhaya case, the girl who was pulled off who was raped in a bus. And
Delhi,
this
in
became
Delhi.
international news. It
Oh
was
yeah, we were
Nirbhaya,
visiting
the
and
Nirbhaya case.
oh yeah.
I will read that poem. It's
Okay.
called The Hunted, because it's really a very sad poem also. The Hunted. It was just a bus ride home, Mama. Just a bus ride home at 10 that evening. But it was a bus full of hyenas, 6 of them, or 16? Or were they 60? Even my friend pawed me like a hyena, while the others watched, licking their lips, saliva dripping from their wet, sloppy, lolling tongues. They pounced on me, they stripped me stark. They manhandled my helpless body parts. They bit me, slapped me, twisted my protesting arms. They raped me again and again and again, into the recess from which one day my baby could have slid out into this beautiful world. The iron rod tore through the terrified tunnel of my trembling body. The rest is history. The police, the hospital, my recorded statements, the protests. I died far away from home. I died far away from my homeland. What a first trip abroad it was for me. But no, I haven't left. Each winter night in December, you may find me standing next to that ditch at midnight, standing on the lonely bus route, my blood dripping intestines spilling out. Tell me, what was my mistake? Friends, teachers, parents, politicians, and priests.
Very sad. Very sad. So,
On that note,
it sort of reminded me. I think we were there at the time in India, but we were in Calcutta, but it happened in Delhi, as I remember.
Yes, it happened in Delhi.
If I may ask you, does this book also has the poem Sita Unbound or Lakshmi Unbound?
Lakshmi Unbound, yeah. You want me to read that?
Few lines.
Just only a few lines because we're running late.
Yeah.
All right. It does have Lakshmi Unbound, and the other one is Sita's Sisters, but we will keep it for some other time.
One, yeah.
Yeah. So from Lakshmi Unbound, I'll read the first 8 to 10 lines, okay?
Yes.
Don't call me Lakshmi. I can't ever be Lakshmi. I want to fly kites. I want to climb trees. I want to read and write. I want to sing and dance. I want to climb mountains. I want to swim in the seas. I want to do what I like whenever I like. I want to be mad. I want to be bad. I can't be in corners of four-walled spaces. I can't be in eddies. I want to flow in the mainstream. I want to be in whirlpools. I want to roam and run. I want to eat fruits from trees. I want to drink to the last drop the juice of grapes. I want to cook for myself. I want to dream. I want to pace the rainbow arch in a spectacular hallucination. I can't be Lakshmi. I will ever fail this endurance test. I have to speak, I have to cry, I have to scream, I have to laugh. I have to swim in rivers, I cannot swim in pools. I want to fly like an eagle. I want to glide like a feather.
Thank you. It's like Tagore's poem, short story, Shamakti. I was seeing the film the other day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Ashmita.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was nice conversing with you. I didn't feel it was some sort of a formal recorded program. I felt I had met a friend after a long time.
A long time. We'll see you again. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.